Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for our webinar on the assessment of redevelopment proposals in the city of Honolulu using ArcGIS Urban. My name is Brooks Patrick. I lead the business development team behind ArcGIS Urban as part of Esri's Smart Cities sector. Today we have a special guest, Ken Schmidt, who will be joining us all the way from Honolulu. Ken is the GIS administrator for the city and county of Honolulu. And over the last 6 months, Ken and his team have been doing some great work testing and providing feedback on the use of ArcGIS Urban, looking specifically at the capacity and really viability of affordable housing proposals by making changes to underlying regulatory code. I'll start the webinar today with a little background information on ArcGIS Urban, and then I'll hand it over to Ken. And finally, I'll wrap it up at the end with a quick overview of upcoming events and what's new. So let's go ahead and get started. Our cities are under intense economic, social, and environmental stress. And to fix it, a lot of people agree that we should really have a major paradigm shift in our development model. Just last week, I was visiting Melbourne, Australia, pictured here. And no matter where I was in the city, I could spot at least 4 to 5 cranes overhead. Currently, we see that major stakeholders in the development of our urban landscapes are not synced. They don't have a common platform from which to address major challenges. This many times results in unintended growth or many times controversial growth. So today, some of these challenges include the basic fact that many cities need a map of what's being planned and what's being built and where that's happening. Also, the process of reviewing new development usually relies on developer illustrations and not necessarily a true spatial evaluation of that proposal. Current methods to update zoning and methods to conduct future land use change scenarios, specific areas of the community, are highly manual, and these processes can also be pretty costly. And overall, what we see is that there needs to be a more web-based, crowdsourced approach for gathering community input on plans and projects. I think we all know that the community members who usually show up to the council meetings are not necessarily the folks who want 4- or 5-story multifamily development in downtown. So we really need ways to reach more diverse demographics. So the bottom line, currently there is no common environment or platform in the market today for holistically visualizing and designing and sharing what's being planned and what's being built. So what we've been designing is ArcGIS Urban, a modeling and planning system to really orchestrate this process of urban development. And we've been focusing on making this system easy to use and fun to learn. It's inherently 3D and can work with your existing 2D and 3D GIS information. And Urban also offers a set of web-based planning and design tools that can support your work. So let me quickly provide you an overview of the 3 core capabilities of ArcGIS Urban. The first is that ArcGIS Urban leverages a 3D city model, a base map, as context for visualizing and mapping change. These indicators can be configured and overlaid, related to demographic changes, walkability analysis results, and even flood risk as just some examples of custom indicators that can be added. And Urban will also come with pre-configured indicators out of the box. The second core capability is related to establishing an overview of projects and all the active design review work going on. Our users have been asking for web-based tools that support the review of project drafts as they're submitted during the review process, really as part of that building application process or permitting process. These projects can be shared internally across departments or agencies, or for publicly shared anonymous viewing. So Urban can also be embedded on existing web pages that you might have, really improving the overall transparency that one would have with the public. And finally, the third core capability is related to zoning and land use planning. And so Ken will be speaking to you in a little more detail on this, but Urban can essentially be configured for local regulatory code. And by formatting this code into a common data model, we can actually produce a 3D visual representation of not only the maximum buildable envelope, which is looking at the setback conditions from streets or interior lot lines and maximum building heights, but it also allows you to generate what could be built through the allocation of typical building types, or in real estate, products. And these plausible buildings respond to allowable space uses, coverage variables, and FAR, floor area ratios, that are usually contained in zoning codes or in overlays. So these visual representations drive detailed downstream reporting and scenario planning, really at that parcel level. Now I'm going to hand it over to Ken to take you through a great case of leveraging ArcGIS Urban in Honolulu. So over to you, Ken.
Aloha and mahalo, Brooks, for this opportunity to speak with you today. I really appreciate being able to present what we're doing here in Honolulu. I think this is a very exciting tool, the ArcGIS Urban product, and I'm here today to help illustrate how we are applying it here in Honolulu to assess the land use redevelopment proposals that are occurring in our urban environment. I would like to say special thanks to Sylvia Casas of ESRI. She's the one who's been working with us to help develop this project, and is part of the early adopter program that we are working with with ESRI for this Honolulu project. First thing to understand is that our communities are all facing affordable housing issues. Here in Honolulu, that is a major policy issue that we're trying to address. We have very high cost of living, very high cost of housing, and a variety of different proposals are coming forth to help address these issues. Changes in our zoning ordinances influence our housing market, so we want to be able to understand what would result from these potential changes. Part of our special requirements is not only to quantify the impacts of these changes, but to also visualize the impacts of redevelopment proposals. Our vision had multiple purposes. Part of the project is to establish formal processes for maintaining and managing building structure data. So the creation, the maintenance, and managing of these data types is extremely important for our local governments. Having current and complete, accurate 3D data is essential to performing this type of spatial analysis. Our specific objective in this program was to produce a scenario that evaluated a legislative proposal to redevelop low-rise apartment zoning districts to permit greater height and greater floor area ratios. To emphasize why this is important, and it's important to track and manage new building data, it is because new buildings provide a significant economic impact on our communities and the availability of housing. The integration of ArcGIS with our permitting systems allows us to research these impacts. We were able to identify that 7% of all building permits contributed more than 40% of the entire value of new building construction in 2018. So you can see that a very small percentage of these our permitted projects contributed significantly to the economic impact in our communities. Of these new buildings, apartments contributed 25% of the value for all new buildings. So the realization is that the apartment complex development have a significant impact on both our housing and our local economy. So of all these building permits that we had been issued, 33 of these permits, only 33 of these permits were apartment development. So the first thing we're doing is we're describing the landscape. So we're identifying where a lot of projects are occurring. Every month we have reviews of the major construction projects that are occurring here in Honolulu. Using ArcGIS Urban, we were able to import those projects and identify where they were happening in our area. And for those of you who haven't been to Hawaii, you get a little bit of a sense of what our island environment looks like. And our major urban corridor is located on the south shore of our island. So here we've identified and we've imported all of these construction projects from our permitting system. We can go in and look at them individually, see what the statuses of these particular projects are. We can also go in and start filtering for individual projects or project types and be able to present what is happening, where construction is occurring, what's happening in our community, and what are the projects that may be impacting our housing development and requirements in our permitting programs. We're also working very closely with the ability to integrate BIM models. We're very excited about these methodology to use BIMs to maintain and manage new buildings that are being added to our community, and it's updating our databases. So we're able to import Revit files directly from the ArcGIS environment into these models and be able to show what a potential project may look like, and use the tools of the ArcGIS Urban to analyze what that impact may be visually on that surrounding community. And finally, we'll go back and we're going to be looking at different plans that we're assessing, and this is our low-rise affordable walk-up area. So the data we want to study, model, and visualize is part of this proposal. So low-rise walk-up apartment standards were being proposed to the city to allow for the greater height and density. These were being drafted and prepared not by the city itself, but by the local developers and people in our community who are trying to help in addressing the housing issues that we have. It significantly increases the floor area ratios than in the existing zoning, and it really is intended to create a 5-story apartment complex walk-up, so where you would not have elevators and have very limited parking. So one of the first questions we received from our planners was, how many parcels would be affected? And one of the communities most affected by this is that contains a lot of this apartment and apartment mixed-use zoning, which is known as Mo'ili'ili. And Mo'ili'ili is an area between Waikiki and the communities that extend up into the valleys and mountains. It's a very low-rise development community. Here you should note that we were able to, using the dashboard capabilities of the ArcGIS and the ArcGIS Online tools, we were able to identify the parcels and be able to allow planners to change areas to see how many parcels were being affected. And do note that we also have a pie chart below that that shows the number of parcels by the zoning classification in which they exist. So here we were able to really focus in on an area that we know that any kind of change in the zoning ordinances would provide a great amount of impact in this particular area. Currently in Mo'ili'ili, there are these 3-story walk-ups, and this is very common throughout this particular area. The issues that we had talked about previously is those of the housing costs. Our single-family median housing cost is $770,000. But note that the cost of a 1-bedroom apartment is $1,670 per month. Now, in major popular urban environments, that may not be totally different from other municipal areas, but these kind of costs are what are driving some of these new zoning classification proposals. We have limited developable land. Being an island out in the middle of the Pacific, we have to address sustainability issues, and most of the developable lands that exist currently are outside of our urban center. So here's the study area. A limited area of Mo'ili'ili. So we identified a pilot area. And here you can see the existing buildings and basic location of our study area. You can see the apartment zoning extends out farther from the zoning area. And we can show the development potential based on the existing A2 zoning. We're calling this the business as usual scenario. The gray areas are not apartment zones, so we just call them unzoned areas. In creating the existing zoning, you will notice a long list of zoning zoning classifications. One of the challenges in developing this model was being able to accommodate conditional floor area ratios that exist within a single zoning class, such as A2 zoning class. So FARs would be calculated different based on parcel size. This created 3 zoning classes for each apartment zoning standard. So within each of these zoning classes, you can set the values for the different zoning variables, the FAR, the maximum height, the tiers, the tier setbacks, and finally we're able to produce and show zoning envelopes that is crucial to visualizing what the height limitations might be based on those zoning classes. Here is where this is what the existing proposal is intended to look like. You can see that the local developers and the mayor and city council are looking at trying to provide these 5-story walk-ups. Now what you see on the right is an existing 5-story apartment complex. But the proposal is to provide 5-story walk-up units that would not have elevators and other limitations, but to allow for more affordable rental units to be provided. They were modeling these visuals using traditional graphical tools as well as Lego blocks to model what the units would look like. So one of the things we really tried to approach them with was there is a better way to quantify and visualize these impacts. So using the ArcGIS Urban product, we were able to analyze the low-rise walk-up proposals. We start with the existing conditions and buildings. We then compare to the business as usual. So here's what it would look like if you built out using the A2 zoning standards. And you can see it's a very low-rise development potential. We then change to the low-rise walk-up proposal scenario, the LRW. And here you can see that the development potential increases. One of the things you'll also notice is not all parcels are redeveloped, and this is due to parcels not meeting the development requirements, and they don't meet the size requirements. So here you can see now that we're to a 5-story walk-up, what the development potentials may occur. These structures begin to look a little bit like a Stalag 13, but this is what could happen if you just did it based on what is being proposed. And finally, I'd just like to say, this beats the heck out of using Lego blocks. And we can modify individual parcels. You can modify groups of parcels. You can start doing additional modeling using the tools that's available to you in the ArcGIS Urban for specific building structure types and zoning classifications. Now, one of the other real advantages and power of this tool is the ability to compare different scenarios to each other, and to address questions like what differences will these changes cause. So first off, we're going back to the business as usual, see what it looks like. And on the right, you can see the dashboard and the different metrics that can be evaluated by doing these redevelopment analyses. So once we look at the existing, we can look at the low-rise walk-up scenario. We can then evaluate it to different scenarios, some of these scenarios being developed in Honolulu by individuals, and some being developed in California. So here's this integration of scenario-based planning that is not centralized into a particular location. This allows for other community stakeholders, planners, organizations to be involved in this and to look at the results based on what the metrics are producing, based on changes that you're making to the model or based on changes you're making to the regulations within those particular zoning classes. So the idea of incorporating multiple planning organizations allow us to better involve people in this whole process of assessing and in understanding what kind of what the impact of these new land use ordinance proposals may be on their community. So where are we at now? At the time of this presentation, the low-rise proposal was with our planning commission. It has now moved forward to our city council members who are beginning to review this. The project has been provided to our planners, and the planners are now beginning to evaluate all the different, the ability to produce scenarios. We have other programs such as our transit-oriented development, a new rail system being built here in Honolulu that allows us to assess what the proposals may be for those particular areas. And to understand that some of these new proposals may be weakening the regulatory controls and enforcements that we had become accustomed to. There are many concerns about the transparency of this visualization tool, that it creates the ability for people to have better understanding, when obviously some of the concerns might be that people are trying to present proposals that have specific interests in mind. These data analytics are very useful for producing a participatory method for people to work together in reviewing what is being proposed for their communities. And finally, I'd just like to present that this is a mural that actually exists at a construction site within the Mo'ili'ili area. And it tells you about the story and the culture that existed within this particular area. And that Mo'ili'ili is one of the oldest sections of Honolulu that is rich with cultural history. The story of the lizard and the Pele sister. So redevelopment of such areas needs to maintain a sensitivity to the people and the culture that exists there. Being able to do these kind of design assessments are critical to ensuring that, and it is really important that we can incorporate and include those people that are in the community that don't have the time to go into public hearings, to be advocates within their organizations because of the, the basic challenges we all face on a day-to-day basis. Being able to help drive this change is something I think is very important for our communities. Change is going to be happening. Change is going to be constant, but it can be beautiful. We can maintain the aesthetic value that our communities have found unique to themselves and would like to continue over time. So with that, I'd like to say thank you to ESRI for giving me this opportunity again to speak. And I look forward to working more with this ArcGIS Urban product in studying other proposals that are coming into our offices and for our community.
Thank you very much, Ken. That was great. It's really nice to see how you're able to quickly conduct those kind of build-out scenarios just based on the zoning. We'll definitely be taking questions towards the end. I know there have been a few coming in so far. Also, we'll try and answer questions directly in the discussion window as well. So what I'd like to do now is just summarize and finish up our webinar with basically talking a little bit about what's happened since we last met. So let me give you a quick update on some upcoming events and what's new. So the Esri User Conference is coming up this July down in San Diego, and I'm sure many of you are attending. And I'd like to invite you to our annual special interest group meeting. This will be on July 9th, Tuesday evening of the UC week. And this year's user conference will be an important milestone. It'll be our version 1 release of ArcGIS Urban, and it'll be great to meet all together. We're also continuing our early adopter program between now and the user conference, and I'll provide some information in a bit if you'd like to already jump in and try out Urban. There's also an opportunity to get guided hands-on training for ArcGIS Urban. We will be holding a 4-hour workshop July 6th, which is the Saturday before UC. And we also have a past webinar if you'd like to go in and learn a bit more about the tools and the capabilities. So now for some breaking news on what's new. We're excited to announce that just this week we've released City Engine 2019. I know many of you on the call are probably City Engine users as well. Not only that, this release of CityEngine has integration and data exchange capabilities with ArcGIS Urban. This means you can log into ArcGIS Urban through CityEngine and connect to plans and projects that you might be working on in the web. We see this supporting important workflows associated with downstream design advancement, impact assessment, and really the ability to leverage the latest in Unreal Engine and VR, as well as rendering templates that we've produced, as you can see here in the animation. And there's one more thing. Over the last few months, the team here has been researching different interactive methods of community engagement. And I'd like to invite you to give our prototype a try at the URL link above, which is goesri.com/participatory planning. So this app provides a simple to use sketching environment that anyone can use. You're probably familiar with the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, we think there's a huge opportunity for using these simple web-based sketching environments to better engage with the public, whether it's on the waterfront or if it's in a downtown. Anyone can basically sketch what their vision is for the future and what that might be. Let us know what you think by giving it a try at that URL. And then finally, let us know if you're interested in becoming one of our early adopters for ArcGIS Urban. As I mentioned, we'll be continuing this on through the user conference. So with the support of Esri Professional Services and partners, we'd be happy to discuss the steps you need to take to launch your own city. Because this would be leveraging an unreleased beta of ArcGIS Urban at this point, we would also include the necessary migration to the full version 1 release in July. So shoot us an email if you're interested in learning more. And with that, I'd like to thank you for joining us today and have a great week.